Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters. This is the start of our second match of the day. We're just about to jump in to Surrender versus Alutemu, our winners bracket match. Surrender was able to use his unconventional but undeniably powerful strategy of leaving up Warrior to take down Chonsu, one of the other very powerful South Korean players. And now it is a clash, I think, Gia, of not only the two most powerful regions, but very arguably the two best players from those regions. Glory has definitely taken all of the glory this season for Japan with his incredibly dominant performance through the round robin and the Swiss. But again, looking at it holistically, I still think you can make a very strong argument for Alutemu being the best player in Japan.
Yeah, if we look at maybe the entirety of GM, but I really do have to give it to Glory that for this season, his run has just been spectacular. But of course, we talked enough about him yesterday. Now it's all about these two greats of Hearthstone throughout all the years, and Surrender is once again sticking to his guns, leaving up Warrior, banning Demon Hunter. Let's see if it can get the job done once again.
Indeed, and taking a look here for Alutemu, it is a little bit different than up against Chonsu, of course, where he has the Warlock, I believe, as the differentiating factor here, as well as the Druid, actually. So pretty different overall with no Hunter and Rogue, and instead Warlock and Druid here. These are two decks that Alutemu has, I think, the Druid in particular, he's shown great love for and sticking with it through thick and thin. But the Quest Warlock definitely feels like the kind of deck that Alutemu should perform very well with.
Yes, it is a deck that really rewards planning ahead and considered plays. And I think Alutemu is a player that we've not seen just get too far in his own head or rope out and miss a turn. I think he's able to, manage his time very efficiently, which is low-key one of the most important skills to develop in Hearthstone. But for Surrender, he still has, of course, his favorite Highlander Hunter pet deck that he keeps taking wins to possibly farm that Warlock.
Yes, it's, I think, a very powerful deck at the moment. We have seen players struggle with it. I think yesterday specifically it was Rivius with a very similar lineup to Surrender, who was really struggling with his Highlander Hunter. It was almost the deck that was being swept in both of his series. But I think it's overall just one of the better decks that you can bring at the moment. You have to bring a fourth deck. No one is saying that Highlander Hunter is the best deck in the game, just that it's better than a lot of the other alternatives.
Yes, and as for the thinking of having to bring a third and fourth deck, that's a big reason for why Alutemu's fourth deck is Druid, or maybe even third if we see it in terms of priority from week to week. They're always bringing Druid, those Japanese guys, so they see it as being favorable against Highlander Hunter and Highlander Rogue, just punishing their lack of responses to Glowfly Swarm boards, and later on, should it get to it, wide Mount Seller boards. So we're going to see that come into play. Weirdly enough, I feel like this Warlock could be the toughest deck for Alutemu to get a win with.
I agree completely, Gia. The Hunter has consistently been a very hard matchup for the Warlock. The Demon Hunter, when played very well, I tend to lean on the side of Demon Hunter being ever so slightly favored if you understand how the matchup should be played, looking for much more of those mid-game options than necessarily all out on the early game pressure plan. And then, as we've seen with the Druid, it's not a disastrous matchup at all, but again, does feel like it's ever so slightly favored for the Druid. The weird thing, of course, again, is that it looks like the Warrior has three pretty good matchups, actually, in the Warrior, the Druid, the Demon Hunter, and the regular Highlander Hunter. And it really does just, again, maybe Surrender has a different idea of the matchups, but it goes to show how even if you're specifically planning for it, leaving up Warrior is very, very risky.
Yeah, it's true. But you did bring up that point that maybe has a different idea. It feels like in this meta, despite it being a couple weeks old now, people still have very differing opinions on who's actually favored. And it's in large part due to having to know specifically how to play for that particular matchup. I'm thinking of you have to be an expert at Quest Warlock to take the win versus Demon Hunter and vice versa. You need to know to mulligan for the mid game, as you said. And also, maybe there's a way to play Druid in particular to be better against Quest Warlock. But of course, Warrior versus Demon Hunter, a little bit more straightforward. It's all about that early game pressure.
And now for Alutemu, this hand, well, it's just looking a little bit more like it. This is what you want to see against Demon Hunter. He has the Warmall Challenger and the ability to copy it. Coming down over the next couple of turns. And this is what we were talking about, Gia. You can't just remove for the entire game. You got to develop your own game plan. And boy, howdy, can Alutemu do that.
Boy, howdy indeed. The Warmal Challenger, after it's buffed up with Inner Rage, can be copied by Bloodsworn, and with probably still at least 7 health at that point, it's just gonna be such a nightmare for Surrender to have to remove. Not to mention, Surrender missed a good 1-drop of his own. Looking at the beaming sidekick here, whether it's worth playing for tempo, but I think he rightly holds onto it to buff up one of his more threatening turn 3 minions.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
Oh, even the Hangar as well is a pretty insanely powerful option. South Sea Captain on the following turn is nuts.
It's huge here. Surrender has a good way to shut down any weapons from the deck, but what won't be expecting is just a South Sea Captain and possibly Inner Rage for trade.
Yeah, okay, it doesn't work out perfectly here. The trades are a little bit weird. But, I mean, obviously Warmal Challenger is just not very good here. The sad thing is that you do want to keep the Inner Rage, don't you, to go along with the Warmal Challenger?
What now?
Correct. I feel, though, that it still puts him in a great spot if he just goes for the South Sea trade and use Inner Rage to trade up here, because he still ends up with a 2-3 or 3-3, and Warmal in hand is not the end of the world. At the worst, you could just answer a Blazing Battle Mage or a Battle Fiend, and then he could look to copy something else in the future.
How do you feel about Inner Rage, Battle Rage, and then see what happens and end up with a pretty good trade?
Feels a bit too slow. I feel like this is a prime opportunity to put Surrender on the back foot, which when you can do that as Warrior, I think you absolutely take it. Ah, this is interesting. Develops the Warmal instead of going for the buffs.
Okay, I mean, while I was thinking about the line of Battle Rage, overall, I agree with your point. You want to be staying ahead and dictating the trades here. What this does in a couple of ways, though, is obviously it still sets up for a potential Bloodsworn Mercenary, but what this does more so to me is set up for a powerful Battle Rage. This Warmal Challenger is not going anywhere.
Demons?
Definitely not, and you know, it could still just be copied at 1 attack for a high health minion, which also won't be going anywhere. And as far as removal options for Surrender, it would have been much easier for Surrender to put together an answer for the 3-3 South Sea Captain, say just with Chaos Strike, Hero Power, as opposed to this 110, of course.
And again, tough spot. You just freeze face. You've seen an Inner Rage now, which means that the disastrous play of Inner Rage on the Warmal is less likely to happen. Do you freeze the Warmal?
Yeah, that's the sticking point, right? Because if it just takes a trade here and then rampages, that is super scary as well.
Yeah.
But in that world, Surrender is still maintaining his Frozen Shadow Weaver on the board if it's just trade and rampage. So I think that's why we see him go for Freeze Face and try to prevent any weapon from actually swinging against this.
I wonder.
This is big though. Alutemu can just buff and double trade.
Past the pirate's code.
And it's that awkward turn 4 here for Surrender. He has the best way to spend that mana, arguably, in Kane's Sun Fury, just to trade down on the South Sea Captain. But that is when Alutemu can finally start unlocking the potential of his hand. Ankar can come down, no more freezes, Risky Skipper, Battle Rage, plus a Blood Boil Brute to put that all together.
I'm definitely looking at the Kane. I just wonder if there's an argument for killing the... Or, sorry, softening up the Warmal Challenger instead. It puts the Kane at a very awkward health total, but unfortunately for Surrender, walks right into this Blood Boil Brute. Yeah. I think without any additional information, this trade from Surrender makes the most sense, but oh my goodness.
Yep, that is a very big minion, and you can copy it.
Is an amazing top deck now.
To be fair to Surrender, if he hadn't gone for this line, he would have been probably completely blown out the water because it would have been even bigger being copied.
Oh my gosh, it takes 15 health for him to deal with just 3 minions here. but he can't be leaving up these Marmals. I don't think it's worth it to swing into the Bloodsworn Mercenary, right?
I mean, the thing that he's trying to do is obviously set up for Satyr on the following turn with a couple of swings as his only real way to develop any kind of a board. So maybe he needs to just say, I have to hit either Twin Slice or Chaos Strike off the top to be able to have any chance at all.
It's true. Also, swinging into it twice just puts him within range of Korkron type lethals.
Yeah.
I
mean, he'll take the same amount of damage overall if he waits here.
It's just in the immediate, that's the difference. But the other unfortunate effect of having to leave up this 4/6 is that, oh my gosh, another Rampage. Is both Battle Rage and just Blood Boil Brute coming down as a 5/8. Very threatening. But if you're Alutemu, I like just clocking in more base damage.
As do I. You know, even a Metamorphosis hero power at the moment isn't going to be killing off. It's very likely he's going to have to tank at least an extra 4 damage. And if you throw down the Rampage, you can make that 7. Oh.
This looks like lights out. Alutemu quickly redeeming Warriors' 2 losses at the hands of Surrender last series.
What do you even go for here? They're both insane. I mean, it's probably just the Rampage. Like, it's so difficult to deal with.
So Alutemu, I guess his biggest worry is double eye beam with Ultra. Something it's something very specific. I don't even think that gets there for Surrender.
Yeah, with this way, Surrender is pretty much forced to tank it to have any chance of killing it off, and it's just too much damage. This is a little bit more like what I think we were imagining when we were considering a Warrior Demon Hunter matchup. They get ahead at the start, they stay ahead, and the Demon Hunter just cannot pull it back in time.
And low-key, the heroes for Alutemu there were the early Sky Raiders at the beginning. Just getting those on board was so difficult for Surrender to deal with. He didn't have a great one-drop of his own, but the fact that he was able to trade off a Frozen Shadow Weaver despite not having a weapon online made all the difference, because his Warmaul Challenger could come down without immediately taking that 4 damage.
And that was the crucial turn there, I think, for Alutemu, as you pointed out. Very nicely done. So many different lines there. You know, we were looking at deckhand double trade, deckhand inner rage trade, inner rage battle rage. So many different ways that it could have been gone about there. But in the end, getting that Warmaul Challenger down, I think, was so smart, because not only did it give him the out for very powerful draws like Rampage, it also just set up for powerful Battle Rage, powerful Bloodsworn Mercenary, even if nothing else came off the top. Just great understanding of the matchup from Alutemu.
Love to see it, but of course we did expect Warrior to get a win at some point. You did say it looks favored across the board. I'm looking at this Quest Warlock and it looks unfavored across the board, at least in small percentages against the Druid and Demon Hunter. So we're gonna see it try to get its first win, but Surrender has queued up, I think, what is his best matchup against the Quest Warlock.
Oh yes, and this is looking to be an especially terrible matchup for the Warlock. I don't think it's like one of the worst matchups in the current metagame. There are some pretty extremely bad ones for a lot of the decks, but based on what we've seen, it feels like Warlock really, really struggles to get anything done in this matchup.
Yeah, it feels like not only do they have to go toe-to-toe in the early game, they also have to find Moarg plus Nether Breath. I find that just a Nether Breath is not enough total healing throughout the course of the game to get out of range. And of course, if they don't complete the quest early enough, sometimes Hunter can just threat train going into their Alexstrasza, and the Warlock has to spend full cost mana to deal with those boards, and they inevitably fall behind in that situation. Liking the look of Companion here. I guess it's scary into Dark Skies.
Right. That's the only thing you need to consider, because there are no options that survive Dark Skies. So arguably you throw down your quote-unquote weaker minion first, a Primordial Explorer.
But there's 2 out of 3 chance that the Animal Companion pushes extra damage this turn.
Right, exactly.
Which is pretty relevant. But Surrender is going to take it a little bit slower. Feywing is a great outcome here. Smooths out his curve.
Interestingly enough as well, while it's still fairly slow turns at the start here, I just got word from Lorinda, our official stats man, doing great work as always, that it's only 6-4 over all the matches in favor of Highlander Hunter so far. So Quest Warlock really not having so disastrous of a time as I kind of originally anticipated. Maybe across some of the other regions, the Quest Warlocks having a little bit more success in the anti-aggro.
That's still a 60% win rate, Derek. What are you talking about? I think that's good.
Right, I mean, no, it's good. It's very, very
Okay,
good. But, like, you know, across 10 games, my initial instinct was that it was even worse than that.
Ah, okay. So if he goes Feywing and trades down, then he ends up with 8 health on the board, still dead to Dark Skies. The thing about Feywing is that he plays around... sorry, it's not the Crazed Netherwing turn just yet. The good thing about Feywing is that it's a Feywing. Can't be Nether Breathed or Soul Fired. Makes him have the Dark Skies.
Exactly, and although you don't have a hard read that he didn't have it on the previous turn, because this board was not especially threatening again, you have to throw stuff down in the matchup. It's how you're winning, and you just have to pray that they don't have it. You can't just play around it forever.
And we're seeing the somewhat side benefit of playing the Bone Chewer Brawler that Subtle made the comparison to Tar Creeper last night in aggressive decks, where it's just a well-statted minion that hides your larger threats more so than it being a defensive minion.
Yep.
So many
Not that Alutemu would have been happy about, say, just trading his questing and going double Rain of Fire Mortal Coil, but that would have been an answer had this not been a taunt.
It does look like what he's going for. This is a huge amount of removal expended. He absolutely needs to find a plot twist, and he needs it soon, because this hand is just a load of rubbish.
I didn't actually see that he could go about it in this order. The taunt didn't prevent that specific iteration, and it did feel very awkward for Alutemu to get through, but I think it was absolutely necessary to stave off that threat.
Sure.
It's a good one.
Yeah, interesting. There were, even then, a couple of different ways that Surrender could start going about this. We could see him go for, like, weaving into hero power every turn where possible. Now that he's got Zephyrus, going for Animal Companion hero power, and then, you know, Fairy Dragon Ingenuity hero power. It's weak to a big heal turn. But it could just get there if Alutemu doesn't have it.
I feel that it's still a little bit too early to be weaving in the hero power. It's still within reason that Warlock can deal with your board if you don't keep developing.
That's fair. All right. Well, now we must be reaching that point, right? He's only a couple of points away from lethal on this turn.
Yeah. Savage Roar would be another 6, not quite there, but
That's the bad one.
Surrender upset to miss any immediate damage, but he can just set up this Desert Spear for Varanus if there should be a Kartut coming down, for example. Because, of course, Alutemu is not running the Abyssal Summoner. This is really tough. You could also make the argument that if you expect Kartut, then wouldn't you rather hex it down with Zephyrus so that he doesn't get the healing, as opposed to Desert Spearing it down? So he's doing some math right now to see that if it's just Kartut, can the Zephyrus hex present lethal?
I mean, even then it's like...
it can.
Yeah, Zephyrus Silence, Zephyrus Shadow Word, Shadow Madness, sorry, there's plenty of ways to go about it. And now, of course, Alutemu going for the big swing turn here. Nether Breath to heal for 16. Thus, essentially resets the board. But this is what Surrender has been playing around here by not going for my idiotic game plan that no one would even consider of weaving in the hero powers too heavily and instead developing a board every turn. It means that when this does come down in the big heal turn with Moag Artificer, he can still push 9 immediately on the backswing.
Kind of unfortunate that the corrosive breath doesn't work the way you want it to with the face damage, but of course it can still one-shot the Moargs, whereas it normally wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, you wish it had like lifesteal, but for damage. Taking out the Moag sounds very smart as well, just to play around even a top deck of Nether Breath here, because outside of that, with both Aranasis in hand, Alutemu is looking very, very dead.
It's kind of a miserable draw.
Yeah.
Plot twists early on. No Dark Skies. And we saw him reaching for the Kartut Defender here. Just as a way to delay and hopefully get to a Twisting Nether turn, but between the incremental damage from the hero powers and whatever Surrender has in hand, I'm not sure if that's good enough for Alutemu. Does he have to go for tap into Plot Twist to try and get the Aranasis back?
Yeah, I think his best chance is tap, Plot Twist, Rain of Fire, or sorry, Dark Skies. And in addition to that, draw the other Aranasis along the way. It's incredibly unlikely, but I think it's his best shot.
Good recognition from Alutemu. Oh, okay. He got the Dark Skies.
Well,
okay.
Something.
And he manages to get down the Ooze as well.
Yeah, that's actually a very big deal. Even without the plot twist, this still keeps him alive. But Surrender now with another Zigsaw off the top on turn 8. It's not the first we've seen today, and I doubt it will be the last.
Board after board, but Alutemu does have the Nether to answer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the net life total for this is just the same because Surrender didn't manage to fit in the hero power. So now Alutemu has a little bit more mana to work with.
But just look how much Alutemu's hand costs here, just in terms of mana. Like, what is he meant to do with this?
Pray for plot twist, pretty much. So Zephyrus cannot give lethal here. It would give Earth Elemental? It might also just give Pyroblast for the follow-up, right? If you spend all of your mana, it sees you're going into 10 mana and Alutemu's at 9. I think that's what we could see Surrender potentially go for. Okay, just gonna hold it all together. Pyroblast is very much a slow card, only meant to be guaranteed lethal when your opponent doesn't have any healing.
Yeah, just always leaves Alutemu with as little information as possible.
This Alex draws is active. My gosh.
So, from his perspective, he's not dead if it whiffs, but I think he should anticipate that if it whiffs, he is going to die.
Yes, for sure. Just asking Surrender to have 3 in hand, basically. So it's just the odds between drawing Plot Twist and Plot Twist being good. I couldn't tell you the odds for that.
I think you just go with the
odds for Alex. Yeah, giving you Taunt or Nazari are the great outcomes.
Like, if you go Kartut, he just has lethal with Hero Power plus Shadow Madness.
This is so rough. Alutemu's gonna pray it's anything but Zephyrus, but he's gonna get the bad news that Surrender gets to even up the series.
Yeah, no matter how you want to go about it here, plenty of ways, I believe, for Surrender to get the job done. And that's going to do it. Game 1, or Game 2, sorry, going to Surrender to equalize things. And the Warlock, as we expected, Gia, taking the loss against the Hunter. If Alutemu could have got the upset there, that would have been absolutely huge and given him such a good chance of qualifying through to the semi-finals. But as it currently stands, he is going to still have to get it done with that Quest Warlock, which I think will continue to struggle.
It will indeed, but at least for Alutemu, that seems to be the worst of its 3 matchups out of the way. He can get maybe slightly more percentages against Demon Hunter and against Druid, and I do think that Alutemu is a very experienced Questlock player, and also I like to see that he's being just very measured with his plays. From a lot of the APAC players, when we do see them slip up, it's because they're roping out or rushing. For Alutemu, it seems like every turn he's taking a set amount of time, and it might seem like he's thinking too long on certain plays, but I think he's just being consistently careful, and that is very important.
Yeah, he's just running through all the ways that his opponent could possibly get back into things here. But the main thing I want to bring up, even though, Alutemu for the most part had a very rough hand, I think he played to his outs very well over the course of that game, tapping into Dark Skies instead of just going for the play of Cartot Defender, which very likely left him dead. The main thing I want to focus on is Surrender's brilliant play over the course of that series. The main thing he was afraid of is exactly what he saw from Alutemu, which was Moarg, 1 or 2, it didn't matter, plus a Nether Breath there to heal back up. And because he kept such a strong board presence at all points along the game, it meant he could punish that line of play so heavily by pushing the immediate 9 damage and stay still very much in the lead.
True enough. And now for Surrender, we could, I get the feeling, see him queue up Demon Hunter because either of the remaining matchups look like a pretty good one for him. For me, at least in Conquest, I like to go for maximum momentum, even though at some point he has to get the win with that Druid.
Yeah, the Druid is going to be
I am wrong.
A bit of an interesting one. But now, like you said, the Druid up against the Warlock. This is, again, a close matchup. And the list for Surrender in particular could make all the difference. He is running the Ysera, and he's got both copies of Exotic Mount Zeller with a Soul of the Forest. So just a very, very standard build of Spell Druid here. And an interesting starting hand, Gia, because Glowfly Swarm, while one of the premium cards in most matchups, or like the card you're looking for, is, I would say, less so against Warlock.
For sure, it is not a win condition most of the time. It tends to be just a scapegoat you throw at them and you're kind of like asking them to pass the first toll gate. Do you have the Moarg Rain or do you have the Crazed Netherwing? If it's not there, sure, you take a win, but almost always you expect them to pass that first test and then you move on to phase 2. Do you have the answer for the Mount Seller boards? One thing I do know for sure is that the Overgrowth is an insta-keep here. I don't mind the look of also having the Glowfly just to make sure that the mid-game has something going on for Surrender.
Is that a full keep? Oh no, okay, just keeping the one. I was going to say, like, when you have the Glowfly Swarm, you can consider going for a Soul of the Forest plan as well. But overall, you are looking for Mount Seller and also, to a lesser extent, Ysera. It's a pretty good early game card when you already have the Overgrowth.
Imagine calling Ysera early game, just Druid things.
Okay, I meant opening. I meant card to have in your mulligan, but I mean I'm not that wrong. It's like turn 6 or something.
Yeah,
to get
no.
it down.
I think it's a good point you make. It's just what Druid does.
Yep. However,
pretty sure we saw Rivius play one for like turn 5 or something.
That didn't count. Double Breath of Dreams games do not count. They are absolutely illegal. But here for Surrender, despite having the Ysera, the rest of it is very, very slow, which does open up the possibility for Alutemu to do some pretty strong things.
Yep, we already see for Alutemu, Plot Twist in hand. He can tap next turn alongside it and just get that quest completion rolling as soon as possible. Because from the Quest Warlock perspective, it seems like it's not enough for them to just go toe-to-toe with the Mount Seller boards, because at some point they're not going to have that answer for the third wave of threats, whether it be Glowfly with a Soul of Forest, whether it be the Ysera Dragons or a second Mount Seller. It feels like they run dry after the Crazed Netherwing and the Twisting Nether. So they actually have to find a way to kill the Druid, and it usually involves just discounting your big dragons or the Abyssal Summoners. Not an option for Alutemu, but even a zero-cost card to it is nothing to sneeze at.
I mean, that is the big thing here, is that, of course, Alutemu has given himself a better chance of winning against Demon Hunter, arguably Hunter as well, despite the fact that the Cartot Defender was not good enough in the previous game, which is what makes the loss against that Hunter so much more devastating, because now he's left with a much much worse list against Druid, because I think in Warlock it's fair to say as well that each individual card that you tech out makes a much bigger difference than in most other decks, because you see so much of your deck before the end of the game. If you put in Kartut instead of Abyssal Summoner, you will be faced with that difference almost every game.
Very salient point, but for this turn in particular, Alutemu is already faced with a tough decision. Does he go for the ooze here and try to get maximum hand size plot twist next turn? Or does he play the plot twist and just hope to draw back that Crazed Netherwing alongside a dragon to answer a potential glowfly on the other side?
I think you just
I would be inclined
right?
to plot twist here.
Yeah. I like it as well. I mean, like you said, no dragon in hand, so Crazed Netherwing. It's not like you're throwing away a premium turn for next turn. You're more likely, I feel like, to get a good answer up against a Glowfly Swarm if it comes down.
Overflow for Surrender is a very welcome sight for him. It now means that after his Ysera comes down, he has a way to cycle for the dragons. Threats did not come early for Surrender. For Alutemu, there's an option to just develop a 5/5 here if you want.
Yeah, two very different lines, both of which have their merit. It's either, like you said, play the 5/5, or it is questing, tap, and then probably Rain of Fire so as to not overdraw. One goes down the line of just developing, which could curve into an Aranasi Broodmother to try and proactively get some answers against a Druid development next turn. The other relies on completing the quest and trying to cheese out with the 0-mana cards off the hero power.
Yeah.
It's
My
a tough
thinking
choice.
is that, my thinking for the Netherwing was that the battle cry is not necessarily gonna clean up the board that Surrender would put down next turn if it's from Mount Sellers, for example.
Right.
But still, the battle cry is probably more relevant than a 5/5 body preemptively developed.
Mm.
It's really close there, but we see Alutemu not go for the tap at all, just playing out two separate minions. This is not something I considered at all.
Right, and I mean, Alutemu may just think this is the best play. That's very possibly true, but I wonder if it's a case of, like, I played out the minion. Do I want to play the Rain of Skies after now in what is, like, kind of the wrong order? I mean, it's not even
Rain of
strictly
Skies!
the... Oh, I said
We
Rain of
did it!
Skies. You got me. I'm a Seal of Fate Rain of Skies gamer now.
Oh, yes. Infected.
Yes. What I meant to
Anyway.
say is that it still gave him options if he went for the Questing Explorer first, so it wasn't wrong to go Rain of Fire second, necessarily.
Yeah, that tunnel visioning on trying to cover up a small mistake is not always the ideal thing to do. Of course, I think it's more likely that Alutemu meant to do this from the start. But for Surrender, the turn is a lot more straightforward. He drew that Overgrowth, makes it so that Ysera on the next turn can come down without the use of the coin. Then he can follow up with Overflow.
Very, very powerful indeed. Alutemu needs to get things rolling if he wants to fight back against this, which is why I am a fan of him going for the draw game plan over the Crazed Netherwing game plan. Again, he's not running the Abyssal Summoners, so his ability to lock down the board is significantly diminished. Therefore, his best chance is to get quest completed as soon as humanly possible.
I think Alutemu was thinking last turn that he wanted to dump cards, create hand space, and go for taps, and he's not viewing Rain of Fire as a dumpable card in this matchup. He probably sees this as a very useful AoE tool should a Glowfly plus Soul of the Forest type board come down. You need both the skies in that instance with either the Netherwing or Bulwark Artificer. And so that's why we're seeing him be so reserved. But if we're talking about macro game plan, I'm also not sure if I'm on board with this. I think that the taps overall could be more valuable than having fail-safes against only one of Surrender's many potential avenues to victory.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for Alutemu, sorry, I understand your point about dumping cards, but I think you just need to be riskier in this matchup. You know, yes, you may need Rain of Fire in order to clear off a Glowfly Swarm plus Soul of the Forest board, but are you winning in the average draw with this play as opposed to the outlandish circumstances where they do have those very niche boards that they can create in the late game? I think just going for the consistent tap as much as possible, play out the Rain of Fire, maybe even play out the Soulfire here just to free up even more space in hand, I think is just a more consistent approach to the matchup.
I completely agree with you. It might be just a product of Alutemu's specific hand, which seems to be very AoE heavy. He had both Nether Wings, both Rain of Fire, and Twisting Nether. But the problem still stands that if he takes this very slow approach of not being able to complete the quest right away, sometimes he ends up with everything at full cost and he has to dump something anyway, which is what we're seeing here. Well, overflow on the menu. It's just a question of whether Surrender wants to trade Moonfire first. Okay.
Oh yeah, I really like that. Of course, you want to get the healing value while you can for maximum amount, and this does that very nicely.
A simple spell should do.
Number 2. Okay. Number 3. Nothing to rush into, but still pretty annoying with the Divine Shield. And now Surrender has Glowfly Swarm into Soul of the Forest, even if this board gets Twisting Nethered.
Yeah.
He just has to dump one card here, though, because the Ysera will be generating another one.
Right, and so is that card that he dumps Coin Soul of the Forest, right?
Good spot.
This, I mean,
That looks... Yeah.
if this does get Twisting Nethered, next turn, double Savage Roar. I mean, is that just lethal on the spot next turn? I think it would be, with Moonfire Hero Power.
Yeah, it does. It fits. Well, from Alutemu's perspective, he's going to see if he can play around double Savage Roar, and he'll notice that he can play around double Savage Roar Hero Power, but he won't be expecting, I think, a 3-card combo.
Can you play around double Savage Roar Hero Power? Oh, it is survive at 1.
Yeah, it would be 29, right?
Yes.
Sorry, it's not really playing around, it's just...
Right.
Yeah.
Surviving at 1 HP from 30 health, playing around. Yes.
Yeah, Gia 2020.
And that's going to do it. Surrender with a double Savage Roar, Moonfire Hero Power, exact lethal, beautiful setup that left Alutemu with basically no recourse to pull things back. And now, again, the Warlock. It's lost to the Hunter, which it was teched for. It lost to the Druid, which it was not teched for. And now, for Surrender, the only class remaining is his Demon Hunter. He just has to win one matchup against either the Warlock, not a great matchup for the Warlock, or the Druid, which is a fantastic matchup for the Demon Hunter.
Surrender has got some business to take care of between each and every game. Must be like Tyler's situation. I don't know if it's a Roomba he's trying to fix, but you know what? He's still able to completely focus during the games. I think that was just very cleanly executed Druid gameplay. What I would like to see from Alutemu, maybe playing his Warlock deck more akin to how he plays his Druid deck, which is going for the high rolls. Maybe not necessarily from the mulligan itself, but inching towards his own game plan instead of viewing the matchup as completely reactive. I feel that that can be a trap that you fall into as Quest Warlock sometimes.
I agree. I mean, it's what we saw consistently in the show match that Fino put on recently, where him, Orange, and Hunter Ace were casting, where Hunter Ace was consistently arguing for these risky lines up against Druid, because as soon as they hit the ramp, you're just behind as the Warlock. It's as simple as that, because they start doing very powerful things much too quickly. And so therefore, like you said, throwing out the cards that may be good, maybe aren't good, you need to find the 0-mana taps, just because that's what gives you the win condition and allows you to do your own broken stuff in return, where you yourself are cheating a lot of mana.
Completely agree. I think the pan out that Alutemu was hoping for, and it was very clear from how he, held on to his AoE resources, was just to outlast what Surrender had. But one, it's weak to a Soul of the Forest board, and two, you can't really expect the Druid to not have card draw at some point and slow down, because half the Druid deck is cards that draw other cards or just ramp in that regard. And I really think that Alutemu, if he had been able to fit in more taps there, it might not have necessarily have panned out against that good of a start from Surrender. But if he had given himself another shot to get that other plot twist earlier, or just finish the quest, tap into a something hugely discounted card, that really could have given him the best chance.
Yes, the best chance possible. Again, it's just about taking risks with this deck. You need to start moving towards the quest completion, the powerful stuff, as quick as you possibly can. And so now, for the last matchup, potentially here for Alutemu, we are going to see him for the third and final chance he has with this Warlock. Going to be lining it up against the Demon Hunter. And out of all of these, Gia, again, while I said the Demon Hunter should be in the lead, I think this might be his best shot at taking a win.
Yes, and if we're looking about Alutemu being more of a reactive player on this Quest Warlock deck, I think that's absolutely what you need to go for at certain points of this matchup. In the early game, I can get behind just removing things one for one and fitting in taps where you can, as opposed to just, going for turbo quest completion. But later on, he also still has to take his foot off the brakes and go for that quest completion. And so this hand opener from Alutemu is already looking perfect from both sides. He has the Dark Skies to be reactive and the plot twist to help get him towards his quest.
And so on the other side here for Surrender, one of the things I'm hearing more and more for the Demon Hunter up against the Warlock is the fact that while the early game cards are very good, if you have Battle Mage on one, Battle Fiend on one, you're happy. You play it out. You get the damage in. It's not the be-all and end-all in this matchup. You need to make sure that you have consistent, powerful mid-game plays in order to get over the finish line against Warlock, which comes primarily in the form of Skull of Gul'dan, and I think Warglaives as well can be very powerful.
That's right. Gravebound Adept, another hugely relevant one. And added on top of that is Alutemu's particular list with the Cartot Defender. It's particularly effective against Demon Hunter to give them even more healing and also make the Demon Hunter feel at least not too complacent about where they swing their Warglaives.
I think it's going to be very clear, though, for Alutemu this game that we are just tapping our way through to the mid-game and trying to get this plot twist rolling. At the moment, I think he can probably hold off on the plot twist for a while because this is a premium hand in order to clear off everything the Demon Hunter can play down.
Oh, it's great. Even turn 3, Surrender's just given him a Mortal Coil target.
Oh, yeah.
Sign me up for more cycle. Moarg.
Moarg Rain, Moarg Dark Skies, any board that Surrender develops here is just absolutely gone.
That's right. Alutemu potentially could have been scared of a Satyr Overseer coming down here, but he has an answer for that. And once he sees that the threat is not particularly huge, we could even just see him go for a plot twist.
And this plays into what I was saying, right? It's the Demon Hunter, the Warlock generally will get a hand kind of like this. Even if they just get Rain of Fire plus Moarg, Dark Skies, or a Crazed Netherwing, they're going to get some way to clear off the board, which is where the mid-game plan comes into effect for Surrender a lot more heavily.
Team Surrender hover over just the Frozen Shadow Weaver as an on-curve play. And this to me feels like Alutemu's first difficult decision, where the 4 damage is not negligible. Kind of first instinct is to remove that because you don't want to give them any extra damage. But if he goes for Dark Skies this turn, it means he's missing a tap and a potential great plot twist.
And so my response to that would be Soulfire. Looks pretty good here to just be able to take out the Frozen Shadow Weaver. You are losing potentially some pretty good cards in the matchup, but it just immediately saves you health, which is what all of these cards are trying to do later on, and you get the tap.
Yeah, it just does carry that inherent risk of discarding the plot twist being the big one, or the Moarg, also scary to lose.
And I mean, it's worth saying he could just tank the 4 damage. That is a very valid line. It's not the end of the world.
It's what I was looking at. It was just tap twist, but I might be getting too greedy with this. Okay. So this to me reads like Alutemu's setting up for Sky's twist, because the hand is still relatively large that he can clear off almost anything Surrender develops this turn.
Yeah.
And plot twist on an empty board.
So for Surrender here, I think the thing that you really want to do most of all is play around Crazed Netherwing, because
Right.
Dark Skies is generally impossible to play around other than just not committing. You know, you can hold back, but it's impossible to make your minions statted the wrong way so it can't clear your board most of the time. Whereas Netherwing you can. Like, for example, Glavebound here would be enough in order to get above the 3 damage AoE. Beaming Sidekick on the Frozen Shadow Weaver also does the same job. Love it.
Very measured approach from Surrender here. Also like that he didn't go too overboard with coining out the Glavebound Adept, because I think he is on track to get the skull down as soon as possible. We could see Metamorphosis to unlock it next turn along with coin immediate activation, or just try to get it down from the right side.
Well, there is a very clean play now of tap Dark Skies in order to deal 10 damage to everything clear off the entire board. But even then, Surrender, as you said, by holding back the Glavebound Adept, has an appropriate response of just developing another big threat on this turn.
It's getting into the territory now where it's very scary to just play a singular Glavebound, because Alutemu's best response is those Moargs and Nether Breath. No Nether Breath in the hand yet for Alutemu, but he's got both of the Moarg waiting in the wings.
Okay, so then the alternative is get the Metamorphosis down to go for Skull next turn. It's not ridiculous.
Yeah, it really isn't. And there's no pressure for Surrender to immediately expend that hero power. Not until he himself sees a 2-turn lethal.
Thing is that you kind of have to anticipate what does Alutemu want to do next turn, and turn 6, again, whether it's the Kartu or the Abyssal Summon turn, is a turn that they want to kind of develop their own thing, I feel like, a lot of the time, which Glavebound could punish. Whoa.
Yeah. Okay, Surrender is just going to attack from all fronts here. He's saying that if you have the Nether Breath, then you have it. He can't play around it forever. At some point, he needs minions to go face to shore up all of that extra damage to compensate for the healing.
But even then, I would say this does kind of play around the Nether Breath. By coining out the Battle Fiend here, at the very least, we'll be able to sneak in an extra 2 damage.
It's getting so scary now for Alutemu. Still no healing available.
It's the right way.
Questing, yeah. And then next turn, if he needs it, he's got the plot twist to try and find that healing that he so crucially needs.
I am complete.
Okay.
Instant watermelon for Surrender there, of course.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that he was supposed to kill off the Moarg with Chaos Strike and hope the rest can fill out his curve, but I think you're just playing around too much there. This feels more safe.
Even if it's not Nether Breath, we could just see Arenasis pulling him out of range.
Or Zephyrus!
Active Zephyrus?
Healing Touch, that's insane!
You take those.
Oh, yes.
Especially... Oh, you take that one, though. That's the big one.
Yeah.
Oh. Wait, does he not want to...
He was for 8, right? I mean...
Yeah. He
obviously, he'd have to target his own
tap.
minion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the big one for me is he fits in a tap if it's just Nether Breath this turn.
Yeah.
I wonder.
It is a premium piece of removal that he's just targeting at his own minion, though.
Sure.
Yeah. But then again, it is a premium piece of removal, but Zephyrus is a premium piece of removal or a weapon destruction or a heal. Literally, whatever you want, it will be able to get the job done.
Alright, Surrender has seen a big burst of healing, or at least the first round of it. Now he's heading into the second phase of the matchup, which is trying to kill the Warlock. Warlock can get anything too ridiculous discounted from their hero power.
And this is the reason, Gia, why I like Surrender's list. He's got the Spectral Sight, he's got the Crimson Sigil Runner, and what it allows him to do is just turbo cycle through his deck at this point and try to find Altruist.
Altruist and the Warglaze, we haven't seen any of it. other glaive bound as well. The other skull is available, but potentially could get little next turn.
Yeah, that's right. The mana is just a little bit too much to play it from the left at the moment.
I grow
So for Surrender, he could be
impatient.
thinking that since he's not looking to deal lethal next turn, you probably don't play the hero power here.
Yeah.
Instead, he wants to free up one extra mana from the right side, make sure that the skull has the best possible chance of being outcasted, and just sit on the hero power for when it can be lethal later on.
Wow, I mean, active Alex also available next turn
Oh
for
my.
Alutemu. The plot twist, you don't really want to mess with a hand that has active Zephyrus and active Alex.
Yeah, I think he's going trade Netherwing Kartuk here. Goes down to 16, but he's behind a ton. Seems fine.
I like it a lot. And while it's not representing a lethal next turn with Alex Straza, it's with Zephyrus actually, it's getting pretty close, right?
True. Oh man, the
Yeah,
chaos
not
is
quite.
so awkward for Surrender. It's too expensive to play and unlock. We could just see Chaos Strike on the left and Kane and just clock everything face. Hope that the skull gets him something next turn. So if he just goes Chaos Strike Kane, that's 7 now, puts Alutemu down to 9.
Yeah.
Kartut isn't dead to just a trade, but it's very easily killed off by Alutemu. I don't know what the out is for Surrender.
I grow impatient.
The thing is, I think if he's going to have a chance of winning this matchup, he can't be afraid of dying. He needs to just go as aggressive as possible for the win.
Goes for the Umber Wing instead of the Chaos Strike here. He can still unlock Skull from the left next turn anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's Altruist is his real out at the moment in order to try and swing things back. And so now for lethal, like you've got 15 damage if you wanted to go for Gorehowl. It's not quite there, yeah.
Yeah, not quite.
And this seems like a very smart way to play around any potential counter-lethal from Surrender, whilst also healing up a good amount in his own right. I think you could just go face. Even if there's an Altruist, it's just dealing more, it's healing more damage than it's dealing almost.
Alas, poor Warlock.
Oh, extremely tense here for Surrender, but having used the Cane, there's just no way to ignore the Kartut now. So that means he has to get through 21 health, not just a 15.
Altruist buried right at the bottom of the deck. He's got the list with all the card draw you could possibly want, and it's still not enough.
Looks like he's gonna keep digging. Twin Slices with the Sigil Runner. This does seem to make more sense because even if he had drawn the Altruist off the top there, he wouldn't have had mana remaining to do anything significant with it.
I don't think he can even stay alive though for this turn. You know, if he hero powers the Alex, he still has to tank it and then he's just dying.
I mean, from his perspective, he could just shoot the Netherwing and hope that Alutemu doesn't have 5.
Yep.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
He's burning through all his resources as well, deliberately not drawing with the Crimson Sigil Runner to activate the I-Beam, praying, please don't have the Zephyrus in order to kill me. But there it is. Inner Demon, Wind Fury, Blessed Champion, however you want to go about this. Oh, perfect. What do you know? I'm a Zephyrus
You're amazing there.
Prophet. And Alutemu can equalize the series at 2 wins apiece. Gia, it all comes down to this to find out who will be going to our semi-final on Sunday. Can Alutemu lock it out at 3 players, all 3 of the Japanese players going through to the top 4, or can Surrender take back his spot and arguably get the title back of the best player in APAC from Glory?
It would be such a story if Alutemu made it through and just all 3 Japanese players
Insane.
taking the wins and making it to the semifinals. But as far as the remaining decks line up, I think I have to give this one to Surrender. Only has his Demon Hunter remaining, as we saw, and Alutemu has yet to take a win with his Druid. And as far as we've seen, that is a pretty disastrous matchup for the Druid.
It is, for sure, but I think we've seen players understand the matchup and some players who don't understand the matchup. And this is, again, you know, the other casters, the other regions can fire their shots over at plucky little APAC here all they want. But say what you will about us, our players know how to play this Druid deck. And I think Alutemu has been at the absolute forefront of that, being incredibly proactive with his game plan, even in the face of aggressive decks like Demon Hunter. He knows what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Not keeping any removal here. We're looking for Glowflies, Fungal Fortunes, and some ramp. And I think the Crystal Power is something you would much rather see when you're going second, because then it just answers the 1-drop from the Demon Hunter, and then you can curve into Fungal. But because Alutemu doesn't have a turn 2 play here, just remove this with Moonfire.
Ooh. And he does decide to go for it, even though he has the Glowfly. It makes sense, you know, because at the very least that could just trade into one of your Glowflies, and you're taking less damage in the process. But this is close for Alutemu. He's almost got an incredibly powerful hand for the matchup.
And Surrender wishes he had a Wild Growth of his own for this hand.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! I mean, the double Warglaives just make quick work of the Glowfly should it come down. Next turn, because Surrender can coin them out. But this turn at least is lackluster for Surrender.
Yeah, and we're seeing pretty clearly here, I think, the fact that, as you were pointing out yesterday, Possessi and Glory, because they're playing against each other, may not have been practicing together. Alutemu and Possessi, it seems like they absolutely have been. Identical Druid lists where they're running 2 of every copy in the deck, which, devastatingly for Alutemu here, means 2 Soul of the Forest. Completely useless card in this situation.
That's curious to include 2 Soul. I don't feel like I've seen any iteration of the spell Druid that had 2 Soul up until now. My first thought was that's a tech for Quest Warlock, but you would much rather have Ysera in that matchup as well. It's curious.
I mean, you'd much rather have literally anything else here for Alutemu, because, my god, Glowfly Swarm as the obvious play here just gets absolutely slaughtered by Surrender's follow-up, and Alutemu knows that that's a very real option.
Yep. And Surrender.
Oh!
Very easy turn. This Battle Fiend is gonna gain 5 attack.
Alutemu
If he
can
commits
hardly...
a Twin Slice as well.
Yeah, I mean, he can hardly even look, just saying, please no Gushwing of the Warglaives coming down, and here it is, the disaster for Alutemu. Surrender is pushing so much damage, easily threatening lethal in 2 turns. Alutemu needs a miracle to come back, and he can't even play the Overflow if he gets it, Gia.
What is the miracle? Fungal Fortunes into removal plus then Crystal Power for heal. Surrender. Considering whether he wants to hold on to 1 charge of Warglaives to pair with Glavebound Adept for next turn, but given that he has a Twin Slice, I would absolutely advocate for bonking this last Glowfly out of existence.
I mean, it looks like he's just wondering whether he can get another 2 damage face, effectively. 1 from the Twin Slice, 1 from the buff.
Sure.
Makes sense. Just kill him. Look at this Battlefield. It may just be a kind of skinny gorilla, as Raven described it to us casters who have no idea about Warcraft lore. But in this instance, it is absolutely destroying Alutemu.
I mean, if that's skinny, we really have unrealistic standards and expectations for Battlefiend bodies across the world.
Not even going to get into that right now, Gia, as Surrender is able to very easily represent lethal on the following turn. Again, a miracle is needed for Alutemu, and Overflow is one of the few ways I'm seeing he can dig himself out of this one.
There's a chance to draw into Fungal Fortunes here off of the Rising Winds, which could chain into Bog Beam for immediate removal on this Glaive-bound Adept.
Well, that's a clear. That's the start of something.
But it's...
Yeah.
I think he still starts with Cycle from Rising Winds, because he still has enough
Agreed.
mana to then go for Wrath Moonfire after.
Unless he wants to go for Rising Wind's minion so that he can play Iron Bark on it for a bit of extra defense.
Okay. Makes sense, because he's seen a Glaive-bound...
Right.
War Glaives.
Yeah.
But still, I don't feel like the 4/5 is helping him toward an actual win condition.
I mean, it's just about how lucky you think you need to be, right? Because it's 2 cards for Overflow or 1 card for Overflow. This arguably buys him an extra turn, so maybe equals out at the same point anyway.
Okay. Get behind it. Oi, oi, oi!
Well, I guess you're tanking the 8 here, and just to push the little bit extra face, and then you just draw a card.
Yep, runner.
I grow impatient.
There's something to be said for getting the 6/4 on board right now. It pushes
true.
2 still, and Alutemu just played a heck of removal last
That's a
turn.
good point. Yeah, that is a very good point. I mean, for Surrender, you can... I don't know if you can get an exact read on Alutemu's hand, but you can guess it's pretty dead at the moment, to be honest.
yeah.
Like, you're thinking... Probably not... well, he doesn't even run Ysera.
Or
like,
he doesn't, right?
like, maybe Savage Roar you could have a read on, or Innovate if that hadn't been useful on previous turns. But basically, Soul of the Forest is, I think, the premium card you'd guess.
Overall, though, this play from Surrender makes it so that if Alutemu doesn't immediately hit healing, he is just dead to the Glaive-bound.
I mean, even if he does hit healing now, he is still just dead. I don't think there's any outs at all now for Alutemu. Oh! That is the overflow, though!
But I think he's played both Crystal Power now.
Yeah.
Just a little bit too far down in the deck, and Surrender manages to take it as our first player from Group B going to the semi-finals, yet again on the precipice of making it to another Worlds appearance.
I could not be happier for Surrender, Gia. I think, like I said at the start of the day, he maybe doesn't get enough praise from us when we're talking about some of the flashier plays here, because there's no troughs in his gameplay. It's just one big peak that he's just consistently playing at a very high level. So it kind of just sets the standard for him, or sets the standard, sorry, where we expect the very best from him. So maybe we don't appreciate it quite so much when he consistently delivers very strong lines, very strong decks. And after being the second best performing player in the Swiss, ending up, I think, joint 3rd in the round robin along with Rivius, he is now going through to the semi-finals and very possibly will be going to the World Championship 2 years running if he can take the wins on Sunday. What a performance from Surrender.
Yeah. It's gotten to the point where our problem with Surrender is that we compliment him too much that we can't find new ways to compliment him. It's gotten to the point where when he drops 1 series in Swiss, you're calling him washed up. That's just how much respect we have for this player. He is incredibly consistent no matter what year of competitive Hearthstone it is, and we could see him again possibly make that run to Worlds, as you said, but it won't be easy. There's already Glory and Possessi there waiting from the other side of the group, and Alutemu has another chance to join him from the elimination bracket.
He does, and we can take a look at that right now to see how the rest of our day is going to be shaping out, because first of all, I believe we need to head to our elimination match before we can find out who will be facing Alutemu. It's going to be Tom versus Chonsu, and, you know, we've seen from Chonsu, I think, a little bit of a dip towards the middle of round robin in terms of his performance, but I think he's definitely pulled himself back up to the old Chonsu we know and love. He finished, like, I think 2nd on ladder on Asia Pacific this month, or at least was at the number 2 spot just before the switch over to this month's ladder. And Tom60229 on the other half, we've kind of seen him obviously go down to Division B was pretty rough for him, but then in Division B, farming a lot of the weaker players, I think it's fair to say.
All right, if you want to put it that way. Tom, for sure, is a player who himself, we've had some qualms with his play, notably just the risky skippers. I feel we've seen it so many times that his play on Warrior has been just far from the conventional understanding of how to save those cards for a big combo. And we could be seeing the fact that, you know, it's hard to say fact, but our opinion that Tom is not the greatest on Warrior, not have that great of an effect actually, because Warrior is being banned out so often. Maybe you get to skirt by without having that much practice on the deck. And as far as other decks though, I've always consistently been impressed with how he approaches Rogue in particular.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where he is one of the most naturally talented players that we have in